They say in Busan, there's a man who hasn't smiled in 10 years. A ghost in an expensive suit. A king without mercy. But on one rain-soaked night, everything changed. She wasn't supposed to be there, running through traffic in a wedding dress, tears mixing with rainwater, desperation carved into every step. And when she collapsed in front of his black Mercedes, something impossible happened. Kang Dong-ha smiled. This is the story of a woman who ran from one cage, only to find herself at the feet of the most dangerous man in Korea. Hit that subscribe button because you won't believe what happens next. The rain came down in sheets, turning Haeundae Beach Road into a blur of neon and asphalt. Anita's bare feet slapped against the wet pavement, her white wedding dress clinging to her skin like a second layer of desperation. Behind her, car horns blared and men shouted in Korean, words she didn't understand, but whose intent was crystal clear. They were coming for her. Her lungs burned. The beaded bodice of the dress dug into her ribs with every breath. She'd kicked off the heels 2 blocks back, leaving them abandoned near a pojangmaka where an elderly woman had stared at her with wide, startled eyes. Anita didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because stopping meant going back to that hotel suite where her uncle had stood beside a man she'd never met, signing papers that treated her like property. $3 million, her uncle had said, as if that explained everything. As if that made it acceptable to sell his niece to a businessman with connections to people who made other people disappear. The traffic light ahead turned red. Anita didn't slow down. She burst into the intersection, and that's when she heard it, the screech of tires, the angry blast of a horn, and then the world tilted sideways as her foot caught on the hem of her dress. She went down hard, palms scraping against the road, and looked up to see 3 black Mercedes sedans sliding to a stop around her like mechanical predators cornering prey. For a moment, everything was silent except for the rain and her own ragged breathing. Then the rear door of the center vehicle opened, and a man stepped out. Kang Dong-ha didn't hurry. He stood in the rain, immaculate in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, and looked down at the woman sprawled on the asphalt in front of his convoy. His security team moved to intervene, but he raised one hand, a subtle gesture that froze them all in place. She was magnificent in her chaos. Brown skin glistening with rain and tears, natural hair plastered to her skull, wedding dress torn and dirty, and eyes that held more fire than fear. Most people looked at Kang Dong-ha and saw their own death. This woman looked at him and saw an obstacle. And then it happened. The corner of his mouth twitched, then lifted. And Kang Dong-ha smiled, really smiled, for the first time in a decade. His driver, Min-jun, actually gasped. The bodyguards exchanged glances of pure disbelief. In the underworld of Busan, this moment would become legend within hours. "Get up," Dong-ha said in English, his accent precise and cold despite the smile that was already fading from his lips. Anita pushed herself to her knees, then to her feet. Her legs shook, but she locked her knees, refusing to fall again. "I'm not going back." "Back where?" "Wherever those men are taking me. I don't care who you are or what you want. I'm done being handed from one man to another like I'm something to be owned." Dong-ha tilted his head slightly, studying her. Behind them, another car screeched to a halt, a white Range Rover with tinted windows. 3 men in dark suits jumped out, and Anita recognized one of them immediately. Her uncle's head of security. "Miss Ronald," the man called out in heavily accented English. "Please. We can discuss this reasonably. Your uncle is very worried." "My uncle sold me," Anita shot back, her voice carrying over the rain. "There's nothing to discuss." The security chief took a step forward, but Dong-ha's bodyguards moved as one, creating a wall between their boss and the newcomers. The message was clear even without words. "You're standing in the middle of my road," Dong-ha said, his voice conversational but edged with something that made Anita's skin prickle. "Blocking my convoy. Causing a scene in my city." He paused. "This makes you my problem." "I didn't ask to be your problem." "No, but here we are." He turned his attention to the men from the Range Rover. When he spoke this time, it was in rapid Korean, his tone pleasant but his words clearly not. Anita didn't understand the language, but she understood power. She'd grown up around men who wielded it like clubs. Dong-ha wielded his like a scalpel, precise, controlled, and infinitely more dangerous. The security chief's face went pale. He stammered a response, bowed deeply, and retreated to his vehicle. Within seconds, the Range Rover was pulling away, disappearing into Busan's night traffic. Anita stared. "What did you say to them?" "I told them you were under my protection now, and that if they value their employer's continued good health, they should inform him that his niece is no longer available for sale." Dong-ha gestured to his car. "Get in. I don't even know you." "No, but in approximately 30 seconds, more of your uncle's people will arrive. And they will be less polite than the first group." His dark eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something beyond the cold calculation. "You can run again if you prefer. But you're bleeding, exhausted, and have nowhere to go. Or you can accept temporary protection from someone who just made your uncle's men retreat with 6 words. Your choice. But make it quickly." Anita looked down at her palms. They were scraped raw, blood mixing with rainwater. Her feet were cut from running barefoot. And he was right, she had nowhere to go. No money, no passport, no friends in a country where she barely spoke the language. "What do you want in return?" "We'll discuss terms once you're not bleeding in the middle of the street." It wasn't a promise of safety. It wasn't even particularly kind. But it was honest, and right now, honesty felt like a luxury Anita couldn't afford to refuse. She got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Dong-ha slid in beside her, maintaining a careful distance, and the convoy moved forward as if the last 5 minutes had never happened. One of the bodyguards handed her a towel and a first aid kit without making eye contact. "Thank you," Anita said quietly, pressing the towel to her bleeding palms. Dong-ha didn't respond. He was looking at his phone, typing something with quick, efficient movements. The smile was gone completely now, replaced by the mask of a man who'd built an empire on fear and precision. They drove through Busan's glittering downtown, past Gwangali Beach where couples walked hand in hand, past the night markets where vendors sold everything from street food to counterfeit designer bags. The city looked beautiful from inside the tinted windows of a luxury sedan. It looked safe. Anita knew better than to trust appearances. The convoy pulled up to a high-rise building in Marine City, where apartments cost more than most people would earn in several lifetimes. Dong-ha got out and waited while one of his men opened Anita's door. She stepped out carefully, her ruined dress drawing stares from the doorman who was too well-trained to comment. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the ocean and the city lights. The decor was minimalist and expensive, all clean lines and neutral colors that somehow made the space feel larger and emptier at the same time. "The guest room is down that hall," Dong-ha said, shrugging off his suit jacket. "Second door on the left. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you. We'll talk in the morning." "Wait." Anita turned to face him, the adrenaline finally starting to wear off and leaving exhaustion in its wake. "You still haven't told me what you want." "Right now, I want you to clean your wounds, get some sleep, and not cause any more traffic incidents in my city." He loosened his tie with one hand, his movements precise and controlled. "Tomorrow, we'll discuss the terms of your protection. And if I don't like the terms, then you're free to leave. But I should warn you, your uncle's reach is extensive, and the man he sold you to has resources that make your uncle look like a street vendor. Running worked once. It won't work again. Not without help." The truth of his words settled over her like a weight. Anita had known, even as she ran, that escape wouldn't be simple. Men like her uncle didn't lose $3 million and just move on. "Who are you?" she asked. "And don't tell me your name." "I mean, who are you really?" because those men were terrified of you. Dong-ha's expression didn't change. I'm someone who keeps his promises. When I offer protection, I deliver protection. When I make threats, I follow through. That's all you need to know tonight. He walked toward what must have been his own room, then paused at the doorway. Miss Ronald, the doors are not locked. You're not a prisoner here. But if you leave before we talk, I can't guarantee your safety. There are very few places in Busan where my reach doesn't extend. Your uncle and his business partner have no such limitations. Then he was gone, disappearing into the penthouse's interior, leaving Anita alone with her thoughts and her bleeding feet. She found the guest room exactly where he'd said. It was larger than the apartment she'd shared with 3 roommates back in Atlanta, with a bathroom that had both a rainfall shower and a soaking tub. The closet held clothes in her size, jeans, shirts, even undergarments still in their packaging. Either Dong-ha was prepared for anything, or he'd had someone shop very quickly. The hot water of the shower stung her scraped palms and cut feet, but it also washed away the last physical traces of the wedding that never was. She stood under the spray until the water ran cold, then dressed in soft cotton pajama pants and an oversized t-shirt. Sleep should have been impossible. Instead, Anita fell onto the guest bed and was unconscious within minutes, her body finally giving in to exhaustion her mind couldn't fight. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back, the running, the rain, the man who'd smiled at her chaos and then offered protection with terms yet to be discussed. Anita found Dong-ha in the dining area, sitting at a glass table with a tablet in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. He'd traded the expensive suit for dark slacks and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up. He looked younger in daylight, maybe early 30s, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. A place was already set, coffee, orange juice, and a selection of pastries that looked like they'd been delivered from a high-end bakery. Anita sat. I'm not usually a morning person. I'm aware. You didn't move when my housekeeper checked on you at 7. It's now almost 10. You have people watching me sleep? That's creepy. I have people ensuring you're still breathing and haven't attempted to leave without protection. There's a difference. He set down the tablet and gave her his full attention. How are your injuries? Sore. But I'll live. She picked up the coffee cup, wrapping her bandaged hands around its warmth. So, let's hear it. What are the terms of your protection? Direct. I appreciate that. Dong-ha leaned back in his chair. The terms are simple. You live here under my protection for as long as necessary. You don't leave without security. You don't contact your uncle or anyone associated with him. In return, I ensure your safety and deal with the complications you've created. That's it? You're offering protection for free. I didn't say free. I said the terms are simple. What I want in return is information. Your uncle, his business partner, their associates, I want to know everything. Names, locations, financial arrangements, anything you overheard or observed. Anita set down her coffee cup slowly. You want me to inform on my own family. Your family sold you. I want you to help me understand why and to whom. There's a difference. And what will you do with this information? That depends on what you tell me. But I can promise you this, by the time I'm done, your uncle will no longer have the resources or connections to come after you. Neither will his business partner. It should have scared her, the casual way he talked about destroying people's lives. Instead, Anita felt something else, a bitter satisfaction that maybe, finally, there would be consequences for men who treated women like commodities. My uncle's name is James Ronald. He runs a shipping company, but that's just the legitimate front. The real money comes from moving things people don't want scrutinized by customs. I don't know all the details, but I know he has connections in 6 countries. She took a breath. The man he sold me to is Chen Wei. Chinese businessman, owns a chain of luxury hotels across Asia. My uncle owed him money, a lot of money, and I was payment for debts and future considerations. Dong-ha's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Chen Wei. Interesting. You know him? We've done business. He neglected to mention he was in the market for a bride. Dong-ha picked up his tablet and made a few notes. What were the future considerations your uncle mentioned? I don't know. They sent me out of the room for that part of the discussion. But I heard Chinwei say something about expansion into African markets and needing someone who understood the cultural landscape. My uncle has connections throughout West Africa from his shipping business. So you weren't just a bride. You were a business asset. A bridge between Chen's empire and your uncle's network. Anita nodded, feeling sick all over again. I figured that out about 2 hours before the wedding. That's when I ran. Brave, Dong-ha said simply. Or stupid. Possibly both. I prefer to think of it as self-preservation. That works too. He set aside the tablet. This information is useful. It confirms several things I've suspected about Chinwei's operations. Which means keeping you safe serves my interests as well as yours. So I'm useful to you. That's why you're helping. I'm helping because you collapsed in front of my car and made me smile, which created obligations I don't entirely understand yet. His tone was matter-of-fact, but there was something underneath it, a crack in the carefully controlled facade. The usefulness is simply a bonus that makes the arrangement more efficient. You're a strange man, Kang Dong-ha. I'm a practical one. Strange is subjective. He stood, buttoning his cuffs with precise movements. I have meetings today. Minjun will stay with you. Don't leave the penthouse without him. Chenwei has people in Busan, and they'll be looking for you. What kind of meetings? The kind that ensure your uncle and Chinwei understand that touching you now would be extremely bad for their health and business prospects. The kind that establish new boundaries and consequences. He picked up his suit jacket from where it was draped over a nearby chair. I'll be back for dinner. If you need anything, Minjun can arrange it. He was halfway to the door when Anita spoke again. Why did you smile? Last night, when you saw me, you smiled. Your driver looked like he'd seen a ghost. Dong-ha stopped, but didn't turn around. I smiled because I saw someone who chose chaos over captivity. Who burned her whole world down rather than accept a future she didn't want. That kind of courage is rare. It reminded me of something I'd forgotten. What? That not everyone has given up. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Anita sat alone in the expensive penthouse, drinking coffee that probably cost more per cup than she used to spend on groceries, and tried to understand what she'd just agreed to. Protection from one dangerous man in exchange for helping him destroy other dangerous men. It should have felt like a lateral move at best. Instead, it felt like the first choice she'd made in months that was actually hers. Minjun turned out to be younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-20s, with a baby face that contrasted sharply with his professional demeanor. He set her up in the penthouse's home office with a laptop and secure internet access, then took up position outside the door like a very polite, very armed statue. Anita spent the day researching Kang Dong-ha. What she found was fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. He was the CEO of a legitimate construction company, but rumors swirled around him like smoke, connections to organized crime, deals that happened in the shadows, a reputation for absolutely ruthless efficiency. He'd taken over the company from his father 10 years ago, and within 5 years had expanded it into one of the largest construction firms in South Korea. The timing coincided with when people said he stopped smiling. She found photos from before. Young Dong-ha at business events, usually with an older man she assumed was his father. In those early photos, he smiled occasionally, small, controlled expressions that never quite reached his eyes even then. Then she found photos from after his father's death. The smile was gone completely. So was something else, something indefinable that had made him look almost human. What happened to you? She whispered to the screen, studying a photo of Dong-ha at some charity gala, his expression carved from ice, while everyone around him smiled and laughed. She didn't hear Minjun approach until he spoke from the doorway. Miss Ronald, would you like lunch? Anita jumped, closing the laptop guiltily. Yes, thank you. And please, just call me Anita. Miss Ronald makes me feel like a teacher. Minjun almost smiled. Almost. Anita, then. What would you like? I can have anything delivered. Surprise me. Something Korean. I want to try real Korean food, not whatever fusion stuff tourists get. This time he definitely smiled. I know just the place. Lunch was an array of dishes Anita couldn't name but devoured anyway. Spicy rice cakes, savory pancakes, soup so flavorful it made her eyes water. Minjun ate with her at the dining table, slowly relaxing as she asked him questions about Busan, about Korea, about everything except Dong-ha and his business. You're not what I expected, Minjun said finally, helping himself to more kimchi. What did you expect? Someone more. He searched for the word. Fragile. You ran away from an arranged marriage. Most people in your position would be crying or panicking. You're eating tteokbokki and asking me to recommend K-dramas. Anita shrugged. I spent 3 months being scared. Scared of disappointing my family. Scared of what my uncle would do if I refused. Scared of ending up married to a stranger who saw me as a business investment. Last night, I stopped being scared of the wrong things. Now I'm only scared of going back to that. Everything else is just details. You're brave. I'm practical. Just like your boss. We're a good match that way. Minjun's expression shifted, becoming carefully neutral again. My boss doesn't match with anyone. He doesn't get close to people. Why not? That's his story to tell. Or not tell. But Miss Anita, be careful. Boss is helping you because it serves his interests. Don't mistake that for something else. I won't, Anita promised. But even as she said it, she thought about the smile, about the crack in the facade, about a man who'd forgotten that not everyone gives up. Dong-ha returned at 8 p.m., walking through the door with the same controlled efficiency he brought to everything else. His tie was loosened, his expression tired, and there was tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there that morning. Hard day at the office? Anita asked from her spot on the living room sofa, where she'd been reading a book Minjun had recommended. Productive day. Hard is subjective. He poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey from a crystal decanter. Your uncle sends his regards. You spoke to him? I had my people speak to his people. Same result. He's agreed to formally dissolve any agreements regarding you. The paperwork will be finalized within 48 hours. Anita set down her book slowly. Just like that? He just agreed. I made him an offer he found more valuable than holding on to you. And I made it clear what would happen to his shipping operations if he refused. Turns out your uncle is very attached to his ability to move cargo freely through Busan's port. What about Chinwei? Dong-ha's expression hardened. Chinwei is more complicated. He's claiming breach of contract and financial damages. He wants compensation for his trouble. How much compensation? More than your uncle can pay. Which means he's using this as an excuse to make demands he's always wanted to make. Territory, business concessions, access to markets I control. Dong-ha downed the whiskey in one smooth motion. He's trying to leverage your situation into a larger negotiation. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to start a war. You didn't start anything. You just illuminated battle lines that were already drawn. Chinwei has been looking for an excuse to push into my territory for 2 years. You gave him that excuse. Now I get to use you as an excuse to push back harder than he expected. He poured another drink. It's actually quite convenient. I'm so glad my nightmare is convenient for you, Anita said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Dong-ha looked at her for a long moment. You're angry. I'm tired of being a piece on someone else's chessboard. I ran away to stop being that, and now I'm just on a different board with different players. Fair point. He carried his drink to the sofa and sat down, leaving a careful distance between them. What would you prefer? I can put you on a plane to anywhere in the world. Give you money, new documents, a fresh start. You'd be free. Would I? Or would Chinwei's people find me eventually? Eventually, probably. But it would buy you time. Maybe years. Maybe long enough for him to lose interest. Anita turned to face him fully. What do you get out of this? Really? Not the business advantages or the information I can provide. What do you actually want? Dong-ha was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than she'd heard it before. I want to remember what it feels like to care about something beyond power and profit. I want to look at someone who burned their world down rather than accept a cage and remember that courage exists. I want. He stopped, seeming surprised by his own honesty. I want you to stay. Not because you're useful. Because when I saw you running, something in me remembered how to smile. The admission hung between them like something fragile. Anita could see the effort it had taken him to say it, the crack in the armor he'd spent a decade building. I'll stay, she said. Not because I don't have other options. Because I want to see what happens when someone refuses to accept your carefully controlled world. Because you smiled at my chaos, and I think maybe you need more chaos in your life. Chaos isn't safe. Safe is overrated. Safe was my uncle's house, where I watched them sell me like property. Safe was agreeing to marry a stranger. I'm done with safe. Dong-ha smiled then, not the brief ghost of expression from the night before, but something real and lasting. You're going to be trouble. Absolutely. Get used to it. They sat together in the quiet penthouse, drinking whiskey and watching the city lights, and neither of them mentioned the fact that every rule Dong-ha lived by said this was dangerous. That getting close to people created weaknesses. That caring about something beyond power made you vulnerable. But Anita had reminded him of something he'd forgotten, that not everyone gives up. That sometimes courage means running into traffic in a wedding dress. That sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the most necessary one. And Kang Dong-ha, who hadn't smiled in 10 years, found himself smiling at the impossible woman who'd fallen into his life and refused to be anything other than exactly who she was. The battle with Chinwei would come. The complications and dangers would escalate. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered as much as the simple fact that for the first time in a decade, Dong-ha felt something beyond the cold calculation that had defined his existence. He felt alive. And it terrified him almost as much as it thrilled him. If you're still here, you've just witnessed the beginning of something impossible. A man who forgot how to smile meeting a woman who refused to stop running. But this is just where their story starts. The real chaos is coming. Chinwei won't give up easily. Anita's past will catch up with her. And Dong-ha will have to choose between the empire he built on ice and the woman who reminded him what warmth feels like. Hit that like button if you want to see what happens when a Korean Mafia CEO falls for the woman who crashed into his life. Drop a comment telling me what you think happens next. And subscribe because part 2 is going to blow your mind. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes after this. See you in the next one.